What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Marquel Russell, and you can check him out at scalethesmartway.com. And Marquel, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit. Marquel's some great content. You should check it out on YouTube. He did one about Disney, which I really liked. You can check out an episode I did with the co-founder of Pixar. And he had some crazy stories about starting Pixar, working with Steve Jobs and everything else. So that's a great episode. Also, the theme of this is also, turning your life around. Marquel did not have a silver spoon, I guess, right? To say the least, Marquel, early on.
To say the least, for sure.
And there was an episode I did with Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director of the Other Side Academy in Salt Lake City. And Other Side Academy is committed to transforming the lives of people who are incarcerated, who have records and multitudes of crime, to turn their life around. He was on the brink of actually a 29-year prison sentence when he was accepted to Delancey Street. And I guess he first got arrested when he was 13. He had spent a total of 15 years in jail and is now the executive director of the Other Side Academy. It was a really inspiring episode. So check that out and many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full production execution. Marquel, we call ourselves the magic elves that work in the background to make it look easy for the host and make it super easy, a push button solution. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Marquel Russell. And his business is called Client Attraction University. He helps coaches, consultants with growth and revenue generation. And he went from high school dropout, former drug dealer, to multi-million-dollar business growth strategist and coach. You can learn more at scalethesmartway.com. And they've helped their clients collectively do over $1 billion in revenue. So Marquel, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Dr. Jeremy.
We will get to the crazy days. We'll go back to your 19-year-old self. But for now, just tell people about Client Attraction University and what you do.
Yeah. So what we found is, just kind of give you some backstory. So I got introduced to this whole crazy world through network marketing. And when I got into network marketing, for those who are familiar with it, it's like MLM and stuff like that. So it's like, typically they're like, hey, just talk to your friends and family and things of that nature. So based on my background, I had an interesting group of friends and family. So I had to, but they weren't interested in legitimate business. So the only marketing advice network marketing companies gave you was talk to your friends and family, or talk to people who come within 3 feet of you, or do home and hotel parties. So I tried that way, didn't really work out. I did it to the max. And then I was introduced to online marketing. So I got introduced to online marketing, which introduced me to direct response marketing. And I was just totally fascinated about direct response marketing and how to leverage it to actually attract clients for businesses. And I also discovered that 80 to 90% of businesses end up going out of business simply because they don't know how to get clients. And of course, in business, the way you make money in business in the world is by helping people solve a problem. And you help people solve a big problem, that's when you can make a lot more money, right? So I know a big problem, obviously, was getting clients. So I decided to carve my space out in that particular area. And I just started teaching what I was learning as it relates to getting clients and getting leads online and how I was growing my businesses. And then people started reaching out, asking me to coach them. And then I discovered that coaching was a whole industry by itself. And I started teaching what I was learning. And then other individuals started getting results and reporting back. And then that just snowballed because I was learning all the different type of stuff and teaching all different type of stuff. But that thing snowballed. That fast forward a few years, it birthed into Client Attraction University because I wanted to create a one-stop shop where you can actually sink your teeth into and get a full blown system to actually get new leads and clients into your door consistently versus like the way I had to do it. I had to kind of go get pieces all over the place and then try to put the pieces to the puzzle together to finally get something. But it always felt like it was missing something. So I was like, okay, what if we had just like a full thing where we could just install the system into a business so that way they can get new leads and clients sooner than later.
We'll talk, Marquel, about your offerings because I'm interested in kind of what the product ladder looks like, how people enter into your world, and what are the ways they can utilize your services. But you hit something near and dear to my heart, which is direct response marketing. I love direct response marketing. I geek out on it. I love it. Who did you learn from? Who are some of the people, at that time and then even now that you learn from? Maybe you know them personally, or maybe it was just you got one of their courses or looked at some of their materials.
Yeah, so I'm super weird when it comes to like direct response marketing, right? So I'm kind of the guys like I always want to know like the genesis, right? So like when I was going through a lot of because a lot of the stuff in today's a lot of it can be regurgitated, and people haven't really applied it. But like when I'm like if I'm reading a book or I'm listening to a course, and they mention somebody, I'm the type of person that'll like go down that rabbit hole, and before you know it, I'm down a rabbit hole that drastically predates the internet. So
You want to go back to the source, essentially.
yeah, I want to go back to the source. So I've done. I'm just looking at my bookshelf. So I've gone through Capel stuff, Halbert, obviously the Dan Kennedy stuff. Um, Escaping me right now. Scientific advertising.
Eugene Schwartz.
Yeah, Eugene Schwartz, breakthrough advertising. I mean, you name it. I'm just a total. I'm like you, man. I geek out. I'm a total nerd. Like I collect direct mail. I have like a binder with just like tons and tons of old letters. Yeah, I'm a total nerd with this stuff.
Any people lately that you like? Those are old school for sure. I think out of those, Dan Kennedy is the only one who's still alive. But
yeah.
Any lately that you follow or people?
To be honest, not as it relates to direct response marketing because it's not any new direct response marketing stuff being taught, right? It's all like principle based. I mean, people take the principles, people who are good take their principles and apply them into their different things, whether it's webinars or challenges or whatever their model is. But I mean, what I love, I think most about direct response marketing is it's principle based. So it's like, yeah, the technology has changed from like written sales letters that you mail out to people, which still works, by the way. But now it's turned into like Facebook ads and YouTube ads and other mediums.
I have to say and give a shout to Carlene Anglade Cole. I think Marquel, she's also in Atlanta, I believe. But she's one of my favorite interviews I've done in direct response world. And she has a book. She says, "My life as a 50-plus-year-old white male." Obviously, you can see the picture. She's not a white male. Yep. And because she's writing, all of her copy is writing to white males. So she's had to get in the mind of the white male when she was doing her copy. So nice. It's one of my favorites. She's a genius when it comes to this stuff. So from a direct response world, use that. Talk about, and you have a good video about Disney, and you kind of talk about it's genius because they get you in watching the cartoons, right? Mm-hmm. And they have an amazing built out product ladder, right? It's like there's free stuff, and then they have goods and movies. We went on a Disney cruise at some point, a keychain could cost like whatever, $1. But if you buy one on a Disney cruise, it's like $25, right? Because it's got Mickey Mouse on it or whatever. So what does your product ladder look like? Some of the free stuff, take us through all the way to, the different services.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, we, like you said, Disney had the free content all through the whole ladder. You broke it down already. So basically, we believe more in like a free or premium model, right? So we don't really do like we don't do courses and so forth in a traditional way like a lot of people do. we just take whatever we would have taught in the course and then we give it away for free, right? So where all of the like the stuff that people would normally, that's why a lot of people reach out to us and they're like, oh my God, I went through this free video and you broke down this, and the third, or this free masterclass and you broke down X, Y, Z. And what you shared in that, I bought coaching programs. It wasn't as valuable, right? So it was like we're heavy free. And then our premium stuff, when you come into our actual program, our core program is our Client Attraction University Partner Program. So that's essentially where we work with businesses. We install our systems into their business to help them get more clients. And then now, once they have more clients coming in and they can handle, the second thing that typically happens is now you have the problem that demand creates, right? So at one phase of your business, your biggest problem is like, how do I get more clients? The second phase of that is like, okay, wow, how do I serve these clients at scale? How do I manage a team? How do I hire a team? How do I create systems in place? How do I create this business operational? How do I position this business to eventually sell if I want to, or at least build it to sell? So then we have another program where we actually help, with the CEOs and the founders, put those systems in place and so forth. So those are pretty much our two core programs. And on the front end of that is just heavy free stuff.
So, Marquel, what does that look like? So I love that people can just consume as much as they want and learn, but the people who want, and you talk a lot about this in your videos, which is the importance of bringing on help and coaches and people who have done it. But if they want to go faster, and maybe better, because it takes a lot of time, and sometimes when it takes a lot of time, it's you're wasting money, right? So people think, oh, if I hire someone, it's going to be expensive or something like that. But it's more expensive not to hire someone a lot of times.
It's a lot more expensive not to hire somebody.
Yeah. So
it's like your service, right? It's like, okay, yeah, you can go on YouTube and tinker around and figure out how to do a podcast. So they come to you guys and you just do it all for them. And it's like, okay, now they can focus on some of their business.
Yeah, exactly. So when someone is like, sign me up, Marquel, I want the first part, right? I want to start getting clients, and then obviously they can go through the phase, which makes sense. Then they need to worry about the operations fulfillment. How does it work to work with you? If they're like, listen, I want your system. I want your system installed and start getting clients.
100%. So basically how we do it. So what we found, and one thing that we did previously, is over a series of weeks, depending on how fast the client moved, we install our system in place, like the pages, the emails, launch the ads, all that. And then depending on the person, that could take a week to get live. It could take 3 weeks to get live. It could take 3 months to get live, totally depending on the person, right? However, what we say, okay, how can we shorten that so we can actually get clients live faster? Because the faster we can get the entire system installed, the faster we can start getting results. So what we created was what we call the Smart System Intensive, because our whole framework is called the Smart System. So we basically was, okay, how do we do this in 2 days? How do we install the entire system in 2 days? So that way we got them live, and now we got a new leads coming in, new clients, new conversations, and new revenue. So the first to answer your question, the first phase is we get them onboarded, do some initial pre-work, and then we do a 2-day intensive where we install the entire system into their business, right? And then now it's live. Now they got new leads, new conversations coming in. And then from there, over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, we're just helping them dial in, right? So let's say, for example, they came on board and they were like, okay, I'm looking to add an extra $1 million to our revenue over the next year. Over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, we'll be focused on making sure we're optimizing everything. Because the first phase is like launching, right? The second phase is optimizing. And then the third phase is like scale. And basically optimizing is, I know that can be a fancy buzzword on in the marketing world, but essentially optimizing is launching it, getting some data, right? Cutting the fat, and then the stuff that's working, maximizing that. So we mentioned scientific advertising earlier. So in marketing, you have a hypothesis, right? So you get your best educated guess. So we launch your system based on our best educated guess. Then we do the experiment, just like if it was in science class. How that experiment responds. In marketing, that's called getting some data. So did that work? What didn't work? How can we improve on it? And then we get that data based on what we know is a fact now. And then we build on top of that to increase the results with less effort and remove all the fat. So now over that next period of time, whether it's add an extra million or add an extra 5 or 10 million, or if they just want to add an extra 3 to 4, 500,000 or whatever the numbers are, we'll reverse engineer what that whole process looks like.
It seemed like a key piece of your journey was optimizing the onboarding process.
Yes, for
And
sure.
you shifted to this model where you, again, like it sounded like you can get pieces over weeks and weeks, but you're just like, let's just put this on the fast track, and you decided to do 2 days. Was that a hard decision? And were you getting any pushback from people on carving out 2 days? What did that look like when you transitioned to that onboarding process?
So I think the biggest thing was actually like when I was like laying it out to the team, right? And then getting the team to kind of see it as well. And like to own the process as well, because we were so used to doing it another way. So I think the biggest thing is was getting the team on board. And then it also even took us actually doing it for the team to fully see what I was seeing. In terms of the clients, it wasn't a big sell. It wasn't a hard sell for them because they weren't used to doing it any other way, right? So it was just a necessary next step, right? So, but for the team, we were used to doing it a certain type of way. So I was like, okay, how's this going to work? And then we did it. And now it's like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. And now we're continuing to optimize that process as well.
What else have you found that has worked for you well in that onboarding process? So one is, it's just like, let's do an intensive 2-day, get everything up and running as quickly as possible. What else has worked, or maybe that you found you had to eliminate that didn't work in the onboarding process?
So I think the biggest thing that we found is really simplifying things as much as possible, right? And really looking at, okay, what is necessary here? What is not necessary here, right? And then looking at, because a lot of times in marketing, we track like your CPL, we track, well, for those who are not familiar with that, your cost per lead, your cost to acquire a client, that we're tracking those marketing metrics, your close rate. But a lot of times we aren't tracking client success like metrics. We aren't tracking like your NPS score, like your net promoter score. We aren't tracking your TTV, which is your time to value. So like most people will say, well, our program is amazing or our thing is amazing. And we'll be like, well, how do you know that? And they'll say, well, we get testimonials or our people tell us how great it is. And we're like, okay, well, what exact metrics do you have to track that, right? So for example, if we're tracking that, and let's say with our old process, let's say on average it takes 4 weeks for them to launch their client attraction system. So our average TTV, time to value, would be 4 weeks, right? Some people may say, well, no, the time to value is immediately because they immediately get access to the modules if they provide modules, right? Well, it's like, well, did they actually join your program for modules? No, they didn't join your program for modules. They joined your program to actually get their client attraction system live. So on average, how fast do you help them get that live? If it's on average 4 weeks, a lot can happen within those 4 weeks. But imagine if we shorten that from 4 weeks, which is 28 days, and you turn that into 2 days. Now you drastically turn it down. Now you've helped them get a massive win, right? Now you've created momentum, right? And forward momentum. And that's really the name of the game. And whatever you do. So for example, a great example that I like to use is the most successful company in American in history is Apple, right? So for example, at one point, you probably remember this maybe, like when you used to go buy a piece of technology and part of the instructions was you got to let it charge for 24 hours before you could use it. You remember that?
Yeah.
But if you buy an Apple product, how do they do that differently? It's already charged. So you immediately can open your phone up, right? Immediately start using it, or your MacBook, immediately start using it. You can literally get in the car and open your phone up and immediately start downloading apps and all that. So they're like, okay, this is how we increase the TTV, the time to value. Like if people can immediately experience the value that they paid us for.
Yeah, no, thanks for making that distinction, Marquel, because really what the onboarding process is, or part of it is, especially for you or anyone else, is the user experience, improving the
100%.
user experience. I'd love, what platforms do you like to use to help people get clients?
So we actually have our own built-in system that we created for our clients. So we took all the different softwares, because there used to be like quite a few different softwares that they have to get. So basically what we decided is, okay, what if we just got one system created specifically for our clients, so that way they can come in and click a couple buttons and everything is already automatically installed into the business.
I mean, are you using paid ads on different platforms also? Like Facebook
yeah, for sure. So mostly we use Facebook and Instagram ads. We're starting to test a lot more with other platforms as well, but we haven't started teaching it just yet. But mainly a lot of Facebook and Instagram ads.
One thing I like that you said is imagine if. And I had an episode with Ed O'Keefe, and he wrote the book Time Collapse, and he talks about that in his time collapsing book. Imagine if really opens up possibilities and opportunities. So
Nice.
that wasn't lost on me. So I think that was a key thing that I took away from his book. You're a big fan of shortcutting processes, and specifically through books. What are some of your favorite resources?
Books wise, or just book resources?
Books, yeah, books.
Okay, cool. Because I was going to say one of my favorite book resources is Audible, because I like to listen to audiobooks at 2 times the speed. Some of my favorite books. Oh man, I'm such a nerd when it comes to books. So one of my favorite books that probably my most recommended is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's totally a go-to. One that I actually read recently, which is definitely moved to the top of my list, is 10x is easier than 2x by Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan, yeah.
Yeah. Another one, an oldie but goodie that I just saw as I looked over there, is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. The Big Leap is a favorite by Gay Hendricks. Essentialism, The One Thing, business books. These are all business books, I think, for the most part, as I just said. Also, The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, and Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson. Yeah.
Love it.
I told you I'm a nerd.
I could keep. Yeah, I have 7 credits in my Audible, so those are all a couple I need.
I'm a nerd. What are some of your? I know that you're doing. I know you're asking the question. What are some of yours? Since we're on the topic.
I mean, I'm with you too. Like I like to listen to 2 to 3 times speed. So even if I miss something, you can go back and listen to it again. I mean, the How to Win Friends and Influence People, the Dale Carnegie books are always on my favorite list. One of my favorites of all time from a copywriting direct response perspective, I had Joe Sugarman on the podcast, and he has ad copywriting secrets or something like that. I thought it was one of the best. And then obviously the Gary Halbert book, the Boron Letters. And I had his son Bond on the podcast talking about that. But nice. The relationship books. I like the 80-20 books, Perry Marshall, 80-20 Sales and Marketing. Because again, like that concept of 80-20, I think about probably every hour of my day. What should be the 10 or 20% of things I should be focusing on right now that will get the 80% of results. So, but I'm with you. I'm ultra consumer of Audible. The 4 Agreements I like, simple, like some simple concepts that I can apply. I like the way you think about Marquel, the multiple streams of income. Okay. And I talk about how you think of multiple streams of income and what stage that makes sense.
Yes. So I believe, and this always kind of triggers people a little bit when I talk about it, is like I tell people all the time, like multiple streams of income is a tool of the rich, not a tool to get rich, right? So a lot of times people like they use multiple streams of income as a justification for distraction, right? So it's like I always tell business owners in your earlier phases, and when I say earlier phases, that's anything less than $1 million. Anything less than $1 million a year is like earlier phases. In your earlier phases, your most powerful weapon is focus, right? Focusing on one thing. A lot of times people get way too distracted and they think they have more time and more bandwidth than they really have. Because if you be honest, you really only got enough time and bandwidth to do 2 to 3 quality things a day, right? Everything else you're kind of running on fumes. So it goes to the book Essentialism. It's like, what if every day those 2 or 3 things was focused on your one thing, another book, right? Versus trying to do one thing on 5 different areas. And then you grew that. And then what people got to understand is like streams normally break off of one big body of water. So if you create this one big body of water, now streams will naturally break off. So for example, let's say you're a coach or you're a consultant, right? Or let's just use coach. Let's say you're a coach. All right. Now, as you're building your expertise around coaching, whether that's podcast coaching or whatever, now an opportunity may come about where a book opportunity comes and happens, right? But now you have a team to actually handle that for you, and you can focus on your main thing. Let's say some speaking opportunities present themselves. That kind of breaks off of, but now it's in alignment and it feeds your coaching business. Let's say you're like I said, a podcast coach, and now like you get more and more people asking about, well, can you do this for me and launch my podcast for me versus you just teaching me? Well, yeah, then that opportunity, you may say, okay, we're going to start a podcast agency, or you partner with somebody who does done for you podcasting, and now you white label the services, and now you can still do it. But all of that came from you focusing 2, 3, 4, 5 years on building this big pond, this big body of water that actually broke out into the other streams. And then you start taking this revenue that comes in, and now you start creating buying like passive income producing assets, whether that's real estate, whether that's stocks, whether that's, whatever your thing is, but really just focusing like on one thing. So I tell people, just last thing is, I tell individuals, like, if you and I were in direct competition and I wanted to beat you, and I always say, okay, what do you think I would do if I wanted to beat you? And they always say, well, I'll market me, or change your prices, or do this or that. And I'm like, nope, all I would do is present opportunities to you. Because you take the opportunities, and while you was focused on these new opportunities I'm throwing you, I'd be focused on the main thing.
This kind of goes into niching, and talk about your thoughts on niching, because that is a focus.
Yeah, for sure. So I always I talk about niching and then micro niching, right? So again, a lot of like business owners in the earlier phases, when I talk about this, they're always like, oh my God, I'm gonna leave money on the table. Oh my God, I'm gonna leave people out. Oh my God, that's gonna limit me in how much money I can make. And I'm like, well, no, it's not. And I'm gonna give you an example. We can think about multiple examples, but one of my favorites is this guy named Robert Smith. So Robert Smith, he owns a company called Vista Equities. Not sure if you've had him on the podcast yet, but he owns a company called Vista Equities. They buy private equity companies. I think he's the wealthiest Black man in American history. I think he's worth $8 billion. His company, Vista Equities, they hold about 100 and something billion assets under management. They buy companies, right? Not only companies, they specifically buy software companies, right? Not only software companies, they specifically buy enterprise software companies. So he niched down in private equity. Then he went another level of niching, which was software companies. And then he went another level of micro niching of enterprise software. So he micro niched all the way down. And that's a phenomenal example. And if you think of any other business, they did the same exact thing. Walmart, it may seem like they target everybody, but they actually don't, right? Everybody's not Walmart's customer. Apple, everybody's not Apple's customer. They're all niched down in a way, and you can tell in ways that they communicate their offers and their messaging.
Yeah, and a lot of these, that's a great point. A lot of these companies, what we see, like you mentioned with Walmart, a lot of these companies started off niching and that's how they grew.
Yep.
Right. And like I remember I had the founder of RX Bar on. And now everyone buys RX bars, but at that point, they were really focused on the CrossFit community. And that's what they were focused in on. And it grew in the CrossFit community and kind of grew out of there. So it was really interesting here about that. You know, I like also how you talk about I think your next book is like getting to the source or something, because you seem to that the way you think is you get to the source of everything. And you talked in one of your videos about something about not necessarily wanting to be LeBron James, but then, you know, moving up the ladder of, well, you could be an NBA player, but then moving up. Talk about that concept and how you think about.
Yeah. So basically, I normally, because I do a youth class on entrepreneurship as well, and I was I'm basically explaining to them is like, okay, it's the next level of thinking, right? So it's like, okay, you can be an influencer, right, on Instagram, or you can own the platform where influencers are hanging out on, right? You can be a rapper, or you can own the label that signs rappers, right? Or you can own the distribution company that distributes the companies that signs the rappers, right? You can be a basketball player, or you can be an agent, right? I was talking to my 9-year-old about this because he wants to go to the NBA, right? So I was like, I was talking about Rich Paul. So Rich Paul, he's LeBron's agent and a list of other guys, right? And I was like, man, think about this. I was like, as an NBA player, you, for the most part, unless you're LeBron James, you only get one NBA check, right? As an agent, you can get 20, let's say 20 plus NBA checks, but never dribble a ball. And as an NBA player, unless you're LeBron James, you have a limited career. Like, it's very few individuals who play at the level LeBron plays. He's 38 years old and still got some fight in him, right? But most people aren't going to do that at that level. But you can be an agent and you're still making NBA money 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, right? Off of multiple checks. So you can be an agent. Or another level of that, you can be an analyst like a Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith, I think he made $10, $15 million a year, right? Just talking about basketball. Or you can go another level and you can own a team, right? Or you can start as an agent, start doing some analyst stuff, start taking those checks and start parlaying those, and then eventually own a team or at least part of a team. So don't just be limited to just playing on a team, because technically if you just do that, you're just a high paid employee. And if you don't have it structured right, you could be broke in no time.
Next level thinking. Love it.
100%.
Talk about the evolution of the team for you. You start off, your network marketing is just you hustling. And then as you build the company, what were some of the key positional hires you had to make?
So I think the first critical hire I made was hiring an assistant. So my assistant, she actually started up as a VA, who was a referral. Now she's our operations director, Bianca. She pretty much runs the whole company, but we started as a VA. And I think that was the most critical role initially, because that got me out of things like customer support, replying to a lot of emails, making sure tools and systems are fixed and all the different types of stuff. So she was able to take over a lot of that. I think as you step out of that, then you start looking at, okay, what's my higher revenue type of stuff, right? So I typically tell founders and CEOs, typically the last thing that they want to outsource or delegate, so to speak, if they're doing it, is like enrollment costs, because typically that's the biggest thing that's going to be a driver of revenue, and then marketing. And then as you're growing and now you bring in people who are at least 80 to 90% is good, then you can start like backing out of that and then just kind of start building out the departments.
Let's talk about a 16-year-old you work with, which kind of blows my mind because, it's cool when people start really young.
I agree. So Kristen, he actually, Kristen the Truth Jones, when we started working together, he was 12 years old. And it's interesting how we met. I actually saw him at the Power Networking Conference that George Fraser puts on every year. And I kind of saw how he was carrying stuff. I was like, this young guy, he's doing something, right? So at this time, I was doing a youth event every year, like exposing the youth to entrepreneurship. So I reached out to his mom and I was like, hey, not sure what your son does, but it looked like he had some cool stuff happen. So I started looking at some of his stuff. And I was like, I want to get him down to speak at our event, right? If he does speaking. And at this time, I think they was living in Indianapolis. It was going back and forth from Germany to Indianapolis because she was in the service. And I was like, well, how much would it cost to get him down? And she was like, well, I don't know, I only got a fee. But she was like, I see that you're having Eric Thomas speak at the event, the motivational speaker, right?
Yeah, of course. I
She
love
was
his
like,
book. Yeah, one of my favorites.
She was like, he's always wanted to meet Eric Thomas. So she was like, if you could work it out where he could actually meet him, that'll be worth me getting the ticket and the flight and everything, and you don't got to pay us anything. So I was like, oh, that's too easy. So they came down, we made it all happen, connected them, everything went well. A week or two later, he hit me up and he was like, hey, would you be open to mentoring me? And I'm like, of course. So I'm like, let's do it. So we got him a phone call. And when he talked to me what he had going on, because he's extraordinary 12, he was 12 at this time. Like he was already a Les Brown certified speaker. He had a book that his mom helped him do based on when he was getting bullied in school. Knew how to invest in the stock market, the whole 9 yards. So he had learned how to create a coaching program or create a course for $997. And I was like, man, if I was you, I would do this totally different. I was like, I would turn this into a coaching program and I would charge $3,000 to $10,000 or more. So I was like, what price? I was like, here's the 2 ways to do it. So I kind of showed him both ways, the $997 way that he had learned, and then the other way. I was like, how do you want to do it? And he was like, well, I want to go to the 3,000 route. Like, great. So I laid it all out for him. He went and implemented it. Got his first $3,000 client. He actually did it on a webinar, and he forgot to share his slides. So he did the full presentation. The screen was black the entire time. He had no idea. At the end of it, he made the offer. Somebody bought, so he made $3,000. He didn't realize the screen was black until he watched the replay. So $3,000, boom.
I think when I was that age, well, I don't think I was making any money, but when I could, I think I maybe made less than that in a summer. So that's pretty cool.
That's very cool. So we did that. And he just came back, got some more feedback. He was like, Mr. Russell, by the time I turn 13, I want to make 100,000, right? I'm like, great, let's do it. So by the time he turned 13, he had made $103,000. Now, he makes a couple $100,000. He has his eye set on the NFL as well. But probably over the next couple of years or so, he'll be making more than most NFL players before he even gets to that
exactly.
So yeah.
So now he's 16, right?
16 now.
I do want to talk about another person you worked with, but I want to stick on this person for a second. So Marquel, take me back to you. This person's 16. I can remember when I was 16, I was not doing any of this stuff, of course. Mm-hmm. What was your life like at 16?
When I was 16, man, I was smoking weed, selling weed. I think I already had a criminal charge for getting in trouble at school. I was totally different direction for sure. I was 2 years away from dropping out of school. Now it's legal.
You were ahead of the cure leaf going public, right?
Exactly.
And then there was a pivotal point when you were 19. Mm-hmm. What was going on then?
So when I turned 19, I actually was in jail when I turned 19 on my 19th birthday. My first son was also born when I was 19. So I met my first son in visitation because I was in jail. I turned 19 in jail. So 19 was a super memorable year for me, to say the least.
And you dropped out of high school. Yeah. Did you have a thirst for learning then? Because now when you look back and, it seems as you have this voracious appetite for learning.
Yes. Was
it the same then? And you just weren't inspired by anything? Or what was it? It seems like a big change.
So I had a huge thirst for learning then as well. However, I didn't really make the connection of how any of the stuff that I was learning was going to lead to what I had in mind for my life. Like my goal was to be a millionaire, right? I wanted to be wealthy. It's like I was in algebra 2 actually when I dropped out. I think I was like 10th grade. I didn't really see how algebra 2 was going to make sense. Like nobody's ever asked me the Pythagorean theorem or whatever, right?
Yes.
Like nobody's ever asked any of that. So it's like I don't really see how any of that. I didn't really see how any of that was going to ever make sense. If you know basic third or fourth grade math, you know how to read, right? And know some basic human psychology. I mean, you can make millions of dollars.
One thing you talk about in your journey when you got into network marketing or in general in business, and there was rejection, there's no's, and you talk about how that's nothing compared to what you were going through in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So like when I got into network marketing, the biggest thing people was afraid of was being told no. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that if we can get through enough no's, we can make millions of dollars? It was like, well, yeah. And I was like, where I'm from, like, it's so much against you. Like in the world I come from, it's like you could be shot at, you could be killed, you could be robbed, you can go to prison. It's a lot of different variables. Like you leave your home, you don't know if you're going to come home that day. It's like the worst thing that we got to deal with is like no's, like sign me up. Like I used to be terrified of public speaking, but I was like, okay, well, if I can get over this, one of my mentors used to always say, when you stand up, your check goes up. Basically, like when you start presenting, she was like, typically the person in the room is typically the person that makes all the rent, who's making the most money, the person in the front of the room. So that's when I got into the Dale Carnegie's, the public speaking, Dale Carnegie stuff and stuff like that, and just started working on myself, like through the Jim Rons and the Les Browns of the world and so forth. But I was like, okay, if I can get over that, because I was like, these people aren't necessarily smarter than me. They just knew about the stuff before I did. I'm willing to put in the work. I just need the system. Like if I learn, the drug game, I can definitely learn legitimate business because a lot of the skills and so forth are transferable. All the skills are transferable.
What's the difference, Marquel, between you and how you were able to kind of break that cycle and people who did not get out and did not break the cycle from where you're from?
I would say the biggest thing for me is like number one is I had I had a vision of why I wanted to do it. Number two, I was willing to go through the uncomfortableness that it takes because it's a big transition, right? And I had to willing to be. I use it analogy of like I had to go through this cocoon like phase, right? But I was a caterpillar. I had to cocoon myself for multiple years, right? And even go through a transition of not really making any money for a minute, right? I definitely wasn't making the money I was used to making. And I had to literally make a clean cut from the streets to like not making no money for several years really to figure this stuff out. And most people aren't willing to go through that, right? It's like losing weight, for example. Like if you have a nice bit of weight on you, you want to get in better shape, but you're not willing to fight through the hunger pains, the soreness in the gym, people saying stuff about like you're not willing to go through going hard for 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, still not having the body you want. Most people just aren't willing. They know what to do. They just aren't willing to go through the uncomfortableness for a long period of time to actually get on the other side. So I think you just gotta have a big enough reason why you want to get on the other side of it.
One of the things you talk about too is mindset, and that 90% of it is mindset and how you're thinking. When you go back to 19, at that point, did you have the mindset that you were going to listen, I just want to be a successful business person, or was there a point in time where that was just such a strong belief that you had to do it?
So I think for me, even back then, I never wanted to be just like a local drug dealer, right? So even when I was selling drugs, my goal was never to be a local drug dealer. Like my goal was to be a big time drug kingpin, right? And then I wanted to start an entertainment company, become this big entertainment business mogul. So I always kind of thought on the bigger scale of it, right? I didn't know that I didn't know I'd be doing this. I never even wanted to be famous. I never wanted to be on stages or be interviewed or people know who I am or recognize me in public. That was never one of my goals. Even when I was doing music, I wanted to be behind the scenes. I put the artists out, put the money out, help them with the marketing and stuff. Well, I wouldn't call it marketing. Well, sometimes I did, but help them with that type of stuff. But I knew I wanted to do something big. Just didn't know what it was, even at 19. That was just kind of a means to the end of what I was doing based on what I knew at the time.
You always seem to have a big vision and applying it. At that time, it was obviously a different business than what it is now, but it was still that big vision that you had. There was a physical therapist. We talked about the younger kids who's 16. What kind of work did you do with the physical therapist? Or personal trainer. Personal trainer.
So personal trainer Jay Lopez. So him and I met when I was early on my fitness journey. I actually met him through my sister's friend. Actually, I saw she was training with him. I ended up reaching out to him, and I went for a in-person session to see if he could help. So I ended up signing up. He was charging $249 a month. I was like, cool. It was unlimited training. Cool. So
that's inexpensive.
Very inexpensive. So I went and I was probably going a few weeks. And then one day he asked me, he was like, man, you didn't tell me like you're some type marketing guru or something like that. So apparently he had went to my Facebook page and all that, because I had never mentioned what I do. And I was like, well, yeah. So he was like, man, I've been trying to get my marketing stuff together for a while. I paid people for flyers. I paid people to pass out flyers. Nothing has really worked out. So I started giving him some stuff to do. And at first he didn't do it. And so one day I gave him this thing to do. Like, I was like, hey, create a piece of content about this, right? And the next day I went back and I was like, hey, I didn't see the content. What happened? And he was like, well, I'm going back to get this other personal training certification and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, nah, man, you just scared, right? And he was like, what? It kind of took him back because he wasn't used to people talking to him. I was like, you just scared, bro. Don't worry about it. So he ended up doing it the next day. So I gave him some other tips and he started doing it. Fast forward, his business started growing, right? And then he ended up becoming a client, but he used to struggle to charge $249 a month. I helped him increase his prices. Within 28 days, he enrolled 17 clients. At this point, he was working at his garage. And then we used to start pulling up for sessions, and he had like cars like parked all the way down the street because people coming in and out of his garage. So he outgrew his garage. He moved into another basement gym. He outgrew that. They had to get a physical location, and now he's continuing to grow, and he's a big, influencer in the fitness space as well. And now he charges 50 times what he used to charge.
And hopefully he grandfathered you in.
Yeah, definitely.
There was another company that went from 4K to over 200K. What are some of the things you did with them?
Yeah, for sure. So Tammy and Sheldon, so they actually help individuals start trucking businesses without a CDL. So when we started working together, they was making about $4,000 a month. And they used to work 100 hours a week per person. So I did the math. That's about $5 an hour. So of course they could make more at McDonald's. So they were so aggressive though. Tammy was telling me when they went to funerals, they'd be passing out flyers for the coaching program.
That's pretty aggressive.
That's very aggressive. So we started working together. Her biggest goal was to get to 10,000 a month. She's like, I want to get to 10,000 a month. Great. Their first month they made 22,000. The second month they made 35,000. Then they grew to like 50,000, 60,000. And then I think last year they closed it out around like 1.8 million just in their coaching business. And then I think they did another 800 or something in their actual trucking business.
What were some of the things that you work with them on?
So the first thing we worked with them on, one of the first things we worked them on is their pricing. They were drastically underpriced. I think they was charging $200 or something like that. Forget what it was. But that's one of the first things we helped them on. The second thing we helped them on, well, I probably say that one of the first things before that is like their belief. Because a lot of times people don't charge what they deserve to be charged because some belief stuff is holding them back. Then we helped them with their pricing. Then we helped them with the structure of their program, right? And then the marketing of like how to run their ads. They turned their ads on and had more leads coming in than they could handle. We actually had to turn their marketing off, like put some structure and stuff in place. And then they started having like an influx of clients, even though they were charging 20,000 for the program now. They had this influx of clients, so then we had to help them build out their back end delivery systems to actually serve the clients at a high level.
Who's ideal for you, Marquel? Who's ideal to work with you in your company?
So I would say who's ideal for us are going to be like individuals who are either coaches or consultants, or who provide like done for you type of services, like agencies and things of that nature. And they're already great at what they do. They know they're amazing at what they do, and they're elite in their space. And they want to attract more of their ideal clients to actually serve and like systemize it. So now it's predictable and consistent versus, a pop here, pop there, referral here, referral there. But now they can predictably hit their revenue goals every month.
Marquel, I have one last question before I ask it. I want to point people to check out your website, learn more.
Mm-hmm.
You have lots of content, free content. ScaleTheSmartWay.com, where they can learn more. Last question is just, who are some of your mentors that you've had throughout the years or currently?
I've had so many. Some of my virtual mentors, who I've never met, was like, I guess my biggest virtual mentor I've never met is Jim Rohn. I never got to meet him. I got to see Zig Ziglar speak. I guess my mom was a mentor of mine, business-wise. I didn't realize that till hindsight 2020. Big mentors of mine now is my pastor, my pastors. They're married, so those are huge mentors of mine as well.
Nice. Everyone check out ScaleTheSmartWay.com. Marquel, thank you so much. Loved it.
Thank you for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.